Well, welcome back to another week's analysis behind the news. I want to pick up where I left off last week, talking about the central banks. This is a very important article that appeared in the newspaper, and I want to read some snippets to you. It's about 2 pages, 2 full pages in the newspaper about these central banks and what they're doing, and this is out of the Wall Street Journal. But I mentioned to you that in Basel, Switzerland, these central bankers from all over the world, at least the Western world, meet. Every 2 months, more than a dozen bankers meet here on Sunday evenings to talk and dine on the 18th floor of a cylindrical building looking out on the Rhine. At the table are the chiefs of the world's biggest central banks. These secret talks have focused on global economic troubles and aggressive measures by central banks to manage their national economies. You see, we're talking about socialist countries. They're managing their national economies. Now, that's what Stalin did. That's what Hitler did. That's what Karl Marx advocated. Karl Marx, in the Communist Manifesto, Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, actually, laid down 10 steps for communizing a country. To reiterate, the Communist Manifesto was written it was commissioned by the League of Just Men to Marx and Engels to write a code, if you will, of what they needed to do to alter society and government, to communize society and those governments that they had planned for revolution in the year of 1848. And so January, February of 1848, they published this Communist Manifesto, the Manifesto of the Communist Party, the way they put it. And they came out in the open. Up to this point, they were a secret society entirely. But they wanted some way to come out in the open and expand their influence through these revolutions. The secret society fomented the revolutions, put them together, but they wanted to have a united front, if you will, to show something public, to make it a political movement, on the at least a facade of a political movement. They never planned on getting rid of the secret society, which they kept. And that behind the scenes was the inner party, if you will, behind the Communist Party itself. The rabble in the streets thought they were part of a political party, when in reality they were just minions and cannon fodder for a secret society called the League of Just. And they pretty much put it out in 10 steps as to what would be necessary. First, they said that they had to make everything into a democracy so that they could use the mob to change things in the name of the majority. But the things that they wanted to change was, first of all, abolition of property and land, and application of all rents of land to public purposes. Then a heavy progressive income tax, abolition of all right of inheritance. And then the fifth one was centralization of credit in the hands of the state by means of a national bank with state capital and an exclusive monopoly. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what we're talking about here. This is the implementation of the fifth plank of the Communist Manifesto, and in this case done internationally. Likewise, when you read the manifesto, it says that once we get control in these areas, we have to internationalize it and unite these communist organizations into one big communist one world government. And that's the process here within the fifth plank. By the way, the policies of our central banks did what to a lot of the property owners in this country? People lost a lot of land, a lot of property in 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11. And that is part of the process. Oh, it's all mistakes, and we didn't know what we were doing. And that is the theme throughout all of this. The central bankers have forged their own path, independent of voters and politicians, bound by frequent conversations and relationships. See, you think that you live in a democratic country, but here they're saying that they're doing it independent of voters and politicians. They set their own thing over a managed economy. That's your economy. That's my economy. It's supposed to be a free economy. If the central bankers are correct, they will help the world economy avoid prolonged stagnation and a repeat of central banking mistakes in the 1930s. If not, if they're wrong, they could kindle inflation or sow the seeds of another financial crisis. Will history decide they did too little or too much? We don't know because it's still a work in progress, says Kenneth Rogoff, an economics professor at Harvard. They're taking risks because it is an experimental strategy. Again, this theme, it's experimental. They really don't know what they're doing. They may make mistakes. They don't know where they're going. That's the common theme. They do know where they're going. The central bankers have promised that once the global economy gets back on its feet, they will shut off the spigots quickly enough to forestall inflation. What is inflation? The overissuance of paper currency in regards to goods and services. There's too much paper money out there. It becomes worthless, and so it takes twice as much paper money to buy something because it's become worthless. It's sort of like saying they're going to shut off the spigots before inflation sets in. Inflation is already happening because the spigots are flowing. It's sort of like saying we're going to shut off the water on a waterboard an individual so he doesn't quite drown. That's literally what they're saying. He's still got a lot of water in his lungs. And that's the problem with our economy. Prices are going up because all this money is flooding into the marketplace. And it's going to get worse. They've already said it's going to get worse. We are, another thing here, it says, we're very conscious that we're in an environment that's unusual and we're using a policy weapon that we don't have a lot of experience with. What are you talking about? These people have done this thing over and over and over again since the beginning of our country. We have had a central bank on and off again. We went through a period after the second after the second U.S. bank, where we did not have a central bank until the Fed, but we did have national banking system, and we have always had this problem with bankers wanting to control the economy for their benefit, not for your benefit and my benefit or the country's benefit, for their benefit. Now they're doing it internationally. This is nothing more than a program that was outlined in the Communist Manifesto back in 1848. It's the exact steps that they called for. They are accumulating this power on an international scale now, as well as on a federal scale that they've done through the Federal Reserve. They're consolidating the world in all of these various steps. You talk about the thing with the International Bank, the IMF, the World Bank, etc. That's all part of this. The thing is, too, when it comes to property, you say, how does that fit into it? Well, the United Nations is taking over more and more land across the world in the name of the environment, sustainable development, and that sort of thing. It's all consolidating these things into the United Nations ultimately. They are made to look as though it's all an experiment. We really don't know what we're doing, but they do. It is a conspiracy, and it's long been a conspiracy. But as long as they can convince you these are all accidents, they really are experimenting, then you don't realize what is really going on, and we'll put a stop to it. But that's what's happening with the economy. And that's a little bit more insight as to what's going on in the world of banking. We'll see you next week.